Sugar, spice, and everything nice. Are these ingredients chosen to create the perfect little cookbook? I'm no Professor Utonium and I don't have any chemical X, but I did get a hold of this ultimate collection of Townsville's favorite recipes. So let's hang out with Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup as we take a look at the Powerpuff Girls Cookbook. The Powerpuff Girls, the official cookbook by Professor Utonium? Hey, I admire the commitment to the theme, but seriously, who wrote this thing? I had to flip to the very last page to find out that this book has recipes by Lisa Kingsley and written by Tracy West, so credit to them for bringing this cookbook to life. But if we shift back to the fictional reality of the book, this cookbook is written by Professor Utonium, the scientist responsible for creating the Powerpuff Girls. He put together this collection of recipes to teach his girls how to cook their favorite foods. He even asked the other characters of Townsville to contribute their own favorite recipes, even the villains. That Professor Utonium, such a nice guy. Speaking of villains, don't you think the Powerpuff Girls have one of the most underrated rogues gallery in all of superhero fiction? Fuzzy Lumpkins, Rowdy Rough Boys, Gangrene Gang, and of course, Mojo-Jojo. Come on now. And it's really cool to see the villains as well as other colorful characters from the show make an appearance throughout the book in illustrations. The design of the book is very vibrant with a lot of images and visuals throughout. The food photos look colorful and yummy, but my favorite part is how some of them show the characters actually interacting with the food. I think that's a really neat way of juxtaposing real food with fictional illustrations. Food-wise, it definitely caters to kids, with recipes that are very familiar and appealing for a younger crowd with a big emphasis on looking fun and colorful. But the recipes aren't completely for beginners, as there are a lot of dishes with actual cooking involved that requires some kitchen know-how. Probably better for parents that want to prepare fun-looking Powerpuff Girls themed foods for the kids. Okay, let's get on with it and try some food. I'm going to be trying 3 recipes from the Powerpuff Girls Cookbook to see if this really is sugar, spice, and everything nice. But we are not starting with nice, we're starting with mean, and you can't get any meaner than Mojo-Jojo. So let's start with a recipe inspired by Mojo himself. We're making Mojo-in-the-Hole. For this, we need a container of refrigerated biscuits. Pop them out and place them on a parchment paper-lined baking sheet and lightly press on each one of them to flatten them out to about 3 inches in diameter. Then use a 2-inch round cutter to cut a hole in the middle of each biscuit. Place the biscuit holes right beside the biscuits, then brush the top with either cream or milk, then sprinkle on about a 1/4 cup of cheddar cheese. Now we pop these in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 15 minutes until nearly done, but not all the way brown. Once you remove it from the oven, you're supposed to place a slice of ham in the middle of each hole, but I think my biscuits might be a little too small. In the photo, the ham and egg fits perfectly in each hole, but they completely engulfed mine, so I ended up using a cookie cutter to cut the ham slices smaller. Then crack an egg into the center of each bowl, but again, my biscuit holes are just not big enough for the whole egg, so they pretty much overflowed. This recipe is supposed to make 8 of these, but I'm just gonna make 2, just in case this turns out all messed up. Top each egg with some ground black pepper and another sprinkling of shredded cheddar cheese, then pop it back in the oven for another 10 to 12 minutes, depending on how you like your eggs cooked. Place your biscuits on a plate along with the cutouts. Top with chives and hot sauce if you'd like, and now you're ready to get your day started with an excellent breakfast plate of Mojo-in-the-Hole. For the next dish, I don't have the science chops to keep up with Professor Utonium in the lab, so instead let's shadow him in the kitchen as we make his award-winning entry to the Townsville Chili Cook-Off. We're making Professor's prize-winning chili. First step is to put together the seasoning by combining 2 teaspoons of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, a teaspoon of kosher salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper, half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a pinch of ground cumin. Once mixed, set aside. Then we're going to prep 2 to 2.5 pounds of beef chuck roast, cut to about 1/2-inch cubes and season with some salt and pepper. Now in a Dutch oven, heat up a tablespoon of oil over medium-high heat and fry up the meat a batch at a time so that it's all on a single layer and not too close to each other so they can brown and sear on all sides. Once browned, transfer the cooked meat to a paper-lined plate and do the same thing to the rest of the meat. Once we got all the meat cooked, we're then going to add a quarter cup of beef stock to the Dutch oven and use a spatula to scrape off the brown goodies from the bottom. Then add in a diced medium yellow onion and cook that for about 3 to 4 minutes until soft. Follow that up with 3 cloves of minced garlic and the mixed seasoning from step 1. Finally, add in a 3/4 cup of beef stock along with a 15-ounce can of drained kidney beans, a 28-ounce can of fire-roasted diced tomatoes, 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, and a dose of Chemical X, which according to the cookbook is 1 chipotle pepper in adobo sauce that's been finely chopped. Who knew? Raise the heat to medium-high and bring the pot to a boil, then add the meat and reduce the heat to medium-low and let it simmer while covered for about 2 hours while stirring occasionally. Serve in a bowl and top with some sour cream, some shredded cheese, and some chopped cilantro for Professor Utonium's original formula for his prize-winning chili. Now that we got the spice, it's time for some sugar. Lots and lots of sugar, because we're going to need it to make these Bubbles Blossom and Buttercup looking surprise party cupcakes. To make the cupcakes, we're going to need to mix together 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of salt. Mix all these dry ingredients together, then we're going to move on to the mixer to beat together a half cup plus 2 tablespoons of unsalted room temperature butter with a cup of granulated sugar on medium-high speed for about 3 minutes until light and fluffy. Then we're going to add in 2 large eggs, one at a time, fully mixing the first before adding the second. Then add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract and mix that in. Then turn off the mixer and scrape the sides down before adding in half of the flour mixture and beating on low speed until combined. But you know what sucks? I was completely distracted while doing this and I didn't realize that I was actually adding in icing sugar instead of the flour, and I only realized when it was too late. Needless to say, I had to redo everything, and this time I'm actually adding in the flour mixture. Don't be like me and actually pay attention when you're baking. Now that we got our flour mixed in, add in 1 1/3 cups of buttermilk and beat until combined. Then scrape down the sides again and add in a 1/4 cup of rainbow sprinkles and mix it all together. Now we're going to use an ice cream scoop to plop in the batter into some cupcake liners. I got these silicone ones that I just got very lightly greased. We'll fill them about 2/3 full before popping them in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 17 minutes. Make sure to do the toothpick test to see if it comes out clean to know for sure that it's cooked. Let the cupcakes cool completely before spreading a thin layer of buttercream frosting over the tops of each cupcake. Next, we're jumping on the marshmallow fondant. In a microwavable bowl, toss in a 16-ounce pack of mini marshmallows and microwave them on high for about 30 to 60 seconds, and once melted, add in a 1/4 cup of water, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a 1/4 cup of unsalted butter. Stir everything until the marshmallows and butter are all melted and smooth. Then we're going to stir in about 2 pounds of sifted powdered sugar 1 cup at a time until the mixture makes a very stiff, sticky dough that forms a ball. This was quite a workout and it took some time to put together. Eventually, we're going to transfer this to a powdered sugar-lined surface so we can knead it to work in the sugar. This was super tiring and messy. Not gonna lie, I was not having a good time at all. Eventually, I think I got the consistency right, so now it's time to wrap it up in plastic wrap and let it rest overnight. When ready to use, knead the fondant again in some powdered sugar to soften it up a bit, then divide them into batches. We're gonna need to tint them to make the facial elements. We're gonna need peach for the skin, white, black, green, pink, and blue for the eyes, black, yellow, and orange for the hair, and red for Blossom's ribbon. I'm also using a mixture of cookie cutters and the knife to trace out the shapes to the best of my ability, and as it turns out, the best of my ability is kind of sloppy. I assembled the faces on the frosted cupcakes as best as I can, and that right there is my best attempt at recreating Bubbles, Blossom, and Buttercup in cupcake form. Finally, let's try some of this out. I'm gonna start off with the Mojo-in-the-Hole. Looks cool and all, but it's not love at first bite. Feels kind of doughy and undercooked, which is surprising because I actually thought I overcooked it. The egg is perfect though. It's got that runny consistency that I like, and I love how the yolk just drips all over the biscuit. The ham kind of gets lost, but the hot sauce that I put on one of them gives it a shot of flavor that it needs. But I don't know, I think something got lost in translation here. Maybe I didn't use the right type of biscuit. It's not terrible or anything, but not that great either. I don't think I'd make this one again. Now, is the Professor's prize-winning chili a different story? Oh yeah, this one I really like. Now, I'm a big fan of chili, and my favorite ones are usually thicker in consistency with a mixture of cubed beef and ground beef, but I don't mind this more runny version with just beef cubes. What makes it super tasty is the seasoning. Super flavorful with a hint of smokiness from the fire-roasted tomatoes, and with the addition of the Chemical X, aka the chipotle pepper and adobo sauce, it provided the perfect level of heat. Not too mild and not too spicy. And I usually don't add sour cream to my chili, but I really do like the added creaminess and tartness that it added. This is good stuff. Okay, let's bite into these cupcakes. My fondant cutting skills need work, but taste-wise, this is pretty good. Really good cake consistency that feels moist and it's not too sweet. Looks super cool with all the sprinkles half melted in the butter. The marshmallow fondant was a pain to deal with, but it's actually really tasty as well. It tastes a lot smoother than regular fondant, not as gummy, and it's just a much more pleasant mouthfeel. If you want a solid cupcake recipe, check this one out. So, is the Powerpuff Girls Cookbook any good? I think it's a cute cookbook. I appreciate that even though it's catered to kids' palates, the recipes weren't too plain. Not every recipe had a photo though, but I really dug the overall design of the book, and I really like the playful illustrations of all the characters. Not bad.